Hey, and welcome into the College Huddle. We have a rivalry episode, North only. So if you're from the SEC or the ACC, don't worry. You get all the mentions when it comes to rivalries and stuff like that. We have two Ohio State fans and always Irish John Kenedy, the Notre Dame fan, with us. John, how you doing tonight, man?
There you go. I'll give you guys a little respect for the crowd
Wow.
I'm with here. Yeah, I'll give you a little respect on the Woody there. I'm happy to be here, happy to be with you guys. You know, it's healthy for me to get out of the Notre Dameness for a while, wade into other waters. That's good for me.
I was going to say you kind of have a little bit of a connection with Marcus Freeman as your head coach now, so I feel like there's something here between us. I don't know if you appreciate it or if you feel it, but I feel like there's some kind of connection here between us, John.
I would go with that, but Eric's partner, he likes to rip on Marcus Freeman, so we'll claim him. He don't want any part. He doesn't want any part of Marcus, so that's fine. We'll keep him. Fine.
Well, Eric, can you really bash on Marcus Freeman when it was Jim Tressel not too long ago that was wearing Notre Dame gear?
I
Notre
know.
Dame gear at the Notre Dame. What was it, the spring game? I mean,
Yeah.
Eric, what's
Yeah,
going
got-
on here, man?
Dude, you guys got to realize that spring game, we had Jim Tressel and Lloyd Carr there because Lloyd's kids are going to be our next, or grandkids going to be our next quarterback. Right. So I'm looking down there at the sidelines. It's like there's Tressel and Lloyd. I'm like, what world are we in? I never thought I'd see that, but there they were. Smiles on their face, ND gear, happy to be a part of it.
All they were missing was the Pope, John. I don't know. You had the Pope there. You had the trifecta.
Wild
time.
Times.
My goodness. There is one thing that Notre Dame and Ohio State can agree on, and John made a video where he literally just took a dump on all of that, which we might get into tonight. But that is the fact that we all hate that team from that state up north, and unfortunately, we're probably going to end up talking a little bit about them tonight. So that might be what you're feeling here, JR. Is there's no one with an asterisk tattooed on their arm in the podcast tonight.
Well, there should be an asterisk tattooed on a national championship, but we won't get too far into that, okay? So this is our rivalry episode. What we're going to be doing here is each of us are going to be giving our top 5 rivalries in the North. If this goes well, then we'll probably do one like this for the South as well. I probably won't participate just because I don't know the South rivalries as well, but with the newcomers in the Big Ten and some other newcomers into the Big 12 that they're not South schools. I wouldn't necessarily call them Northern schools. We'll get into that. But before we give our top 5, I do want to give the opportunity for each of us to mention if there was anybody that we didn't put in our top 5 that we do think deserves mentioning. Eric, did you have anybody like that?
Well, I guess I should just make everybody mad from the jump. I struggle. I understand this rivalry. I understand this game. I respect this game. I appreciate what this game means. I just don't like to watch the game because I don't think it's good football. Army Navy. I know that's going to cause a lot of people. It's probably might even be in one of your rivalry top 5s, but for me, it's when I look at the 5 that I have laid out and I look at that game, I would go to one of these other games first every single time before watching Army Navy. Again, appreciate what it means, what it stands for, what the cadets and all of them. And if Aaron watches this, he's going to put me in a headlock and probably break my arm. But that game, I'm sorry, it's really not that good football. It's not. They're both G5 teams, and usually one of them isn't very good.
Well, I will say I have them as an honorable mention for myself as well.
Okay.
Because the way I did this, and I don't know if you guys did it the same way or not, but the way I did this is I did the 5 rivalries that I tell myself I have to watch every single year, even though I'm not a fan of either team. The 5 rivalries I have to watch every single year. Army Navy is one that I know about every single year, but I gotta say I don't make it a priority to watch it every single year. So I respect the rivalry, and I think it's really good for college football. But I can't put it on my top 5 if I don't have the I have to watch it every year. The other one that I had that is up north, I have not watched it often because it's not always on TV. But Harvard Yale is another one. I have them as an honorable mention. So I feel like that's another one that's kind of up there. Two storied traditions, back over 100 years ago. Michigan, I'm sure, loves to talk about their days when they played them and all that stuff. But, so that's my thought there. John, did you have any honorable mentions?
How about Michigan State? How about that one? Like, it's heated, kind of, but like only when Michigan State can bring a little juice to it. Other than that, it's not. But it feels like a big deal in the moment. But it really, the excitement there all depends on if where Michigan State's at in whatever they're doing. But when it's juicy, I enjoy that back and forth a lot. But it's not consistent enough that I can put it in the top 5. What I think is going to be interesting about this list is the thought process. All three of us may have a different way we viewed this assignment that leads us to where we're going to go. And that's what I think is very interesting, from your personal interest in some of these to the national scope to bigger picture stuff. I think that's going to be interesting because we did the assignment. We never agreed on any guardrails. What counts as a rivalry? You're going to get a different answer depending on who you ask. Does the historical elite success have to be a part of it, of one or both parties? Frequency that the game is played? Does it have to be every year? Could it be spread out? These are all things that rattle through whatever brain I got left.
No, I thought the same thing, John. I thought, because there was one rivalry out there, and I'll mention it later on. I don't want to give away my list, but there's one rivalry out there that I know is heated, but they don't play every year. And I thought, well, if they don't play every year, can I really call it a top 5 rivalry for me? Because at the end of the day, one team is afraid to play the other team. And if you're not going to play your rival, are you really a rival? So that's my thought. But John, why don't you kick us off with your number 5 first, and then we'll let Eric go, and then I'll go. What is your number 5 best Northern rivalry in college football?
What if it's not Northern, but it isn't SEC and ACC? We wanted to avoid that.
That's fine.
So I avoided kind of South. To me is what we were referencing back and forth. I felt like was SEC heavy and ACC. So I avoided that part of the country and then went elsewhere. I went with UCLA USC to get on the other side of the coast. And I know that's South, but it isn't what we were talking about South. Okay. It's the Battle of Hollyweird. I love the pageantry. I love the color schemes clashing. I love that weather. There's never a cloud in the sky. There's a little bit of juice to that game every year for me, just because of the ambiance that it gives off. Maybe the way it pops on TV. I really enjoy it every year. The color clash hits me for some reason that I love.
I love the color clash as well. They do the home and home uniforms, right? Where it's the red and then the blue. That is something I wish that Ohio State and Michigan would do so much, because I think it's just a fantastic idea. And I love how close they are with each other. The only thing that kind of reason I didn't really go with that one is because UCLA fans don't care.
That's why I didn't put them in there. I don't know if any they are UCLA fans are so hang 10, brother. Like football's the last thing on their list, it seems like. And they have the most beautiful stadium in all the country.
Yes.
And it's sad. It's sad.
This angle by me may come back to bite me later in the list. There may be a little hypocrisy on my list that I'm going to have to wade through. So we'll get there, and you guys call it out if I get there.
All right. You can count on us for that, John. Don't worry. Eric, you're number 5.
All right. This one is new to me. I did not know these two schools hate each other as much as they do until this year. And when we started the College Huddle, JR, I quickly learned how much Washington and Oregon dislike one another. And given the fact that Washington clipped them twice this past year, the chirping between the Huskies and the Ducks on Twitter is something I just did not anticipate until I dove into those fan bases a little bit with the College Huddle. And then I realized if they own that region of the country, the Northwest, it's Oregon, it's Washington, and they hate one another. Now, they each have their own in-state rivalries, which is interesting. But if you ask them who their rivals are, they will tell you that it's Washington, Oregon. And boy, do they go at it on Twitter. And I really think that one has some legs because they're both coming over together to the Big Ten. And you talk about colors. That's also depending on whatever color Oregon's going to wear that game. That's a clashy color. You got the yellow and green. You got the gold and the purple. Like that one looks good on television.
Is that recency bias? Because I played with this in my mind.
Okay, check this out, John.
Right?
They have played 116 times.
But if neither one of them are elite, who cares?
Well,
because for a large amount of that time, neither one of them was doing anything. So if a tree falls in the woods, does anybody care if nobody's there?
Well,
that's why I went away from that.
A lot of big trees do fall in the woods in the Northwest. So I would say
true.
I feel like this is one that's got it's risen to the surface. Is that fair to say? It's risen to the surface a little more recently. And with their move to the Big Ten and the fact that they're both West Coast, so they will play each other every single year.
Yeah.
Whereas now in the Big Ten, you have some rivals that one of which I'm going to talk about where we're not going to play every single year.
Yeah, that's a modern choice, and I do respect that, and I do agree it has legs. And it's going to be interesting to see how they fare in the Big Ten. It's going to be really interesting. You guys, I think there's going to be a lot of Big Ten schools that are used to being where they are used to being in the pecking order, and they ain't going to stay there. They're going to get knocked down a peg. That's coming, and people aren't going to like it.
There's a lot of 6-win Big Ten teams that have been used to going to the Cheez-It Bowl that are not going to be going to the Cheez-It Bowl anymore.
Yes, I'm really excited for that reshuffling. And some of those schools are used to being what they are, and it ain't going to be as easy to get 6, 7, 8 wins anymore. I'm super intrigued by it.
As long as we don't lose the Pop-Tart Bowl, I'm good. The Pop-Tart Bowl is my new elite bowl.
Well, what about the Snoop Dogg Bowl, baby?
Dude, I'm telling you what, man. If Notre Dame bottoms out, I'm hoping for the Snoop Bowl, baby. Like, dude, you know me. I'll roll into town with my chain. I'll be ready to go, baby. Like, I want the referees smoking. I want everything. I want, concession stand that has infused food. I mean, if we're doing this, let's go all the way, baby.
I pray that Colorado gets 6 wins and goes to the Snoop Bowl.
Dude.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Follow me, Eric. Follow me, man. I played this through my brain. You know, the stadiums play music and stuff. Every one would be a classic Snoop song. Every single one would be a drop of an old Snoop song. Smoke that place out. I'm down for that. If Notre Dame bottoms out, that's what I want.
On the sideline, instead of Gatorade, it's gin and juice. Is that what we're
they're the lead drink sponsor. You're not bull crapping. They are the lead drink sponsor is gin and juice by Snoop. It's amazing. Love it.
We need Snoop Dogg to have a rivalry for his bowl game rivalries. That's our new objective after this is get the Pop-Tart Bowl and the Cheez-It Bowl to have a rivalry or something like that. So, all right, I'll go with my number 5. So I had a lot of deciding up my number 5 because there were 2 games that I really, really had a hard time with, but I ultimately went with the game that is an in-state rivalry because I think in-state rivalries are really fun. But my 2 games I was going against was Nebraska and Iowa. Very heated rivalry. 2 fan bases don't like each other at all. Sometimes I think it's a little funny to watch them argue on Twitter because it's like, you didn't go to a bowl game. We did go to a bowl game. It's like, okay, this is kind of low, but it is what it is. And then the other one, which I ultimately went with at number 5, was BYU and Utah. The battle for Utah. I've seen some of the arguing and stuff like that goes on between these two groups. And let me tell you, Mormons don't look so nice when they start arguing about Utah football and BYU football. It gets pretty rough between the two of them. I love the in-state aspect of it all, and I think that the rivalry has been rejuvenated a little bit because BYU won this past time they played, which was in 2021. So I am going a bit on against myself here that they don't play every single year, but I'm excited for the rivalry to be rejuvenated with both of them back in the Big 12, and I'm looking forward to watching it again.
That's a good choice, and that was considered on mine as well. That's a good choice. I considered it also. Whittingham is awesome. I love that dude. He's a cool dude. He always seems to get more out of whatever he has. He gets more out of it than you think he should. And I mean, if you ask me, he beats USC once or twice every year, so that makes me like him even more. He rides a Harley to the game in a sleeveless tee. What's not to like? I love that guy. I love that dude.
I love it. All right, John, your number 4 rivalry.
Michigan, Notre Dame.
Ooh.
Now, this is not an every year matchup. Okay? Now, follow me here. This is where this gets intellectual. In one way, that takes away from this discussion we're having. And in another way, it adds to it. You don't have that year-to-year build-up. We're going to get you, and then I'm going to get you back the next year, play tag back and forth. We don't have that with them. But when we do play them, it's like all those years have built up to make the moment bigger than what it actually is. And when we do match up, it's a big deal. And to Notre Dame fans, it means that game means a lot whenever it happens, however often it happens. Also, big brand names, the helmets, all the lore, northern schools, close by, that whole thing. But I got them down at 4 because I just think it's not regular enough that I can move it higher, even though it involves my people. So that's kind of my thought. In one way, it takes away from it. And in another way, I could argue it adds to the juice. If you lose, you got to sit on that for however many years it is. And that's a real thing.
Last time you guys played was 2019, correct? Do you know when you play again?
33? I think we go to the Big House. I'm pretty sure we go to the Big House in 33. Unless I'm sorely mistaken, I believe it's 33 is the next time. So that is wild.
No, you'll be playing them before then.
Yeah, because you got that expanded playoff, and then it's going to expand again. So regular season, I believe it's 33 at the Big House. And we're not going to talk about the 19 game. Keep on moving. I'm done. I don't want to even think about it.
Hey, you're 2-1 in the last 3, John. Okay.
I know, but that one was so
better than a team I talk about in the last 3.
Well, that's true.
That's a fair point.
Okay, my number 4. I'm going to expand upon what John said. And as a Buckeye fan, I'm a little jealous of that rivalry. I am.
In what way?
I want that rivalry with Notre Dame that you have with Michigan. I want that as a Buckeye fan. Like, as a Buckeye fan, if Michigan has anything that I don't have, I want that because I hate them so much. Yeah. So the last 2 years getting to play Notre Dame has been really fun. And if I could just be a little bit of a homer for a second.
No wonder you go 2-0 and it's fun. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm amazed.
No, I know. I'm not ignorant to the fact that Ohio State got lucky. Okay? I mean, we did. And I've been begging you, John, to listen to that video I made about the theory I have about Notre Dame and Kyle McCord. I believe if Notre Dame beats Ohio State, we actually beat Michigan and win the Big Ten because it would have exposed Kyle McCord for
Ooh.
who he was, and it would have
Ooh.
forced Ryan Day to actually give the other quarterback an opportunity. But because Kyle McCord got that game-winning drive, it forced Ryan Day to say, I can't pull him now. That's my theory. People think I'm
Interesting.
crazy.
Do you
But
think Ryan Day would have been willing to explore all that after that game, or would it be like you
yes.
do?
I have heard through a couple people who I trust that Ryan Day was still very much on the fence, but when that happened, he knew I can't pull because Kyle McCord's stock went from to oh yeah, baby, here's Kyle McCool. And then from that moment on, it came back down, 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 down as the season progressed. But he never, and then when he did say, you know what, we're gonna do a goal line package for Brown, he gets hurt. You know, there's another world out there somewhere where Notre Dame wins that game. Brown gets the opportunity to win the starting job because we went on a bye after that game, and it would have given him 2 weeks to get him ready for the next game to start.
Hmm.
And then he wins that starting job. And then by the time we play in Ann Arbor, we're ready and we have a quarterback who's more mobile, and we probably win that game.
That's a good theory. That's a good theory.
But to get back to what we're talking about, John.
Well, hold on 1 second, Eric. Are you really willing? Are you really willing to trade all of that? We don't get the moment where Ryan Day yells at Lou Holtz, though. If that happens, we don't get. I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right about now. We don't get that. We don't get the meme. We don't get any of it.
That moment has led to our most popular merch that we sell at the OHIO podcast and the We Want Angry Ryan Day t-shirt.
Exactly.
But
that's what I'm saying.
But yes, I'm willing to trade that moment to beat that team to win the Big Ten to go to the college football playoff. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
That's an interesting theory, Eric.
But I'm jealous, and yes, that's my number 4 as well, is Notre Dame, Michigan.
I have Michigan only on one spot on my list. I did not want to utter their name more than just that one time, so I do not have them on here anymore. My 4th rivalry is Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Oh,
those two fan bases
Yeah.
hate each other. Yes,
Yeah,
the
they
Paul
do.
Bunyan Axe. Ever since I've started doing the Big Ten Huddle and interacting more with Big Ten fans, I am discovering just how much like those two fan bases completely despise one another. I'm learning about how Wisconsin has a recruiting ground up in the northern part of Minnesota, and Minnesota fans hate it. There has been legislature put in place for Minnesota to give a part of their state to Wisconsin because Wisconsin people move to it so much. I mean, there is so much going on there, not just between those schools, but also between the two states. There is just so much going on there. I couldn't leave them off my top 5. I've had to put them number 4. And I think that the PJ Fleck and Luke Fickell, those two guys being the way they are, is only amplifying it even more. They don't really talk about each other, but it's kind of the stark difference between PJ Fleck wears tight pants and does all these things, and Luke Fickell, you know, a man's man, and just like kind of gruff and gets the stuff done, and the way they are. And I think it's a great rivalry, and I'm really excited to see it in the future.
They're both Jim Tressel guys.
Very true.
PJ Fleck's really easy to dislike. Do you guys agree with that? Like
any coach who wears loafers without socks when he's coaching with sunglasses, I got some questions about.
But like, I already kind of thought that before I heard some of the personal stuff off the field, and then that like reinforced it. Some of the issues he's had and the whatever. He just seems like a guy easy to not like.
He is pretty arrogant about himself, I feel like, at least from the exterior and what you see. But I tell you, those Gopher fans, they love him. I mean, he just beat Iowa for the first time last year. That's another rival for them. And they weren't even questioning, do we get rid of him or anything like that? Meanwhile, you got Ohio State fans wanting to fire Ryan Day after 3 games of losing. So it's an interesting one, but yeah, it's an interesting rivalry. Okay, John, you're number 3.
All right. Now we're getting into perhaps John being slightly contradictory. However, I could argue that when I was thinking about this, different things struck me to go on the list for different reasons. Like, does that make sense? There wasn't the same criterion I used for everything on the list. There's certain things that stand out to me more about in different ways. So maybe it's contradictory, maybe it's not. Number 3, Notre Dame USC. Okay. Now, this game means the world to me. They're our number one rival, play every year. Like, that's that team for us. Okay. The issue is some of what you said about UCLA. If USC's not good, they're all hanging 10, catching waves, or being freaks in Hollywood, and they just check out. And that kills the buzz of the rivalry to me. So I got it number 3. It means the world to me every year, but it takes the juice away when they're not good. And then the stadium's half empty and nobody cares. And they're like, whatever. And then when they're good again, they're all back and acted like they never left. The inconsistency of their fan base takes away from what this should be, whether either team's good or bad. Our people are going to be our people no matter what. If they're down, they're hanging out in Hollywood or surfboarding. They don't care about football. So I wish they would be more invested overall, not just when the times are good, but when they're rough as well. But that's our number one rival year to year for Notre Dame, and it's number 1. You got to beat USC. We stand for completely opposite ways of life. These are competing ways of life and values way deeper than the football field. And that's how we see it. It's my number 3.
I have them on my list as well, and I'm surprised that I am higher on USC Notre Dame than the actual Notre Dame fan is.
I got my reasons. I got my reasons, and you'll find
I get
out.
it, and I hear you, and I probably should have thought about a little bit of that as well, but yeah, the whole idea, because I thought about the same thing, the competing ways of life, the Bible Belt, Midwest kind of way versus the West Coast, U.S. California,
the flash,
exactly.
The consumerism, the materialism of Hollywood, all of it it clashes with our entire thing, and it's beautiful.
And like I've always attributed it somewhat to like Pac-12 football, Pac-10 football meeting a Big Ten style, obviously not a Big Ten team, but a Big Ten style of hard nose, run the ball versus what USC has done, with airing it out and kind of the finesse and things like that. Obviously, finesse is making its way more into the Midwest than it has before, but still, like that whole way of the fans and everything else, I'll talk more about it later on. But
yeah, and the other thing is, they have cost Notre Dame like 5 championship game appearances since like the 60s and 70s. Like they have clipped us sometimes where if Notre Dame wins, they're probably going to win it all. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal to me.
Eric, your
number 3 for me is, this goes back a little ways before any of us were born. When Woody Hayes was head coach at Ohio State, one of his biggest recruiting battles was Joe Paterno at Penn State. Even though Penn State was independent, did not play Ohio State, the Pennsylvania-Ohio border was a hot recruiting ground for both Penn State and Ohio State. And those two crossed paths multiple times. They did get to play each other, I believe, twice. I think they split the series between the two of them. That being said, the state of Ohio and the state of Pennsylvania and high school football were also big rivalries, and the All-Stars from Ohio and the All-Stars from the state of Pennsylvania would get together and play a end of season All-Star game. And they did that for this was well before the Army All-Star, high school, and now Under Armour bowl games and All-Star games. It was Ohio All-Stars, Pennsylvania All-Stars. And so when Penn State joined the Big Ten in the 90s, it was immediately a rivalry. You ask any Penn State fan, any Penn State player, you ask the players who played in the game for Ohio State, It was a rivalry, especially in the 90s when Joe Paterno was still there before they had all their issues there at Penn State. Since then, Ohio State has more dominated the rivalry, but there have still been amazing football games. I'm talking whiteouts. The time Penn State kept Ohio State from going beat Ohio State. Then we had the time Ohio State was chosen over them to go to the CFP and probably shouldn't have. And then you also have the come from behind victory in the shoe that I got to witness in person. Like those games, even though Ohio State's kind of dominated them, especially since James Franklin's got there, they have still been great football games. And if you ask any Penn State fan, who's your number one rival, they always say it's Ohio State, which is interesting because we treat it very similarly to how Michigan treats Michigan State. It's kind of a rivalry, yeah, but it's not our big one. But to them, it absolutely is their biggest rivalry. And when the Big Ten released the schedules, when we added 2 teams, if you remember the fake schedule that was released, and then they redid it all again when they brought Oregon and Washington back, Ohio State and Penn State didn't play each other, and both schools were upset about that. So I have Penn State, Ohio State as a great rivalry. And when if Penn State can get back to where they were in the 90s, that game was electric.
I struggle with Penn State, Ohio State because even though I know Joe Pa,
you're younger and you
I
don't
know.
remember the 90s. That's the
I know.
problem.
Well, I was born in the 90s. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't remember half of them. But yeah,
Don't you remember the days when Miami and Penn State were independent like old Notre Dame? We used to just do what we wanted, baby.
Those were the days. And then Rutgers and Penn State and Maryland came to town, which I guess Penn State was much earlier than Rutgers and Maryland, but still. Yeah, I struggle with Penn State because I don't understand why they weren't made a rivalry in the Big Ten, Eric. I don't get it. It to me, it always should have been Ohio State and Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State. They gave Iowa 3 rivalries.
Yeah, that whole thing was just a debacle. And that was Karen Warren. That was just another reason why Kevin Warren, but we call
I was gonna say, do you call him Karen?
We call him Karen Warren on our show. That's just another fumble by Karen Warren. Giving Iowa 3 protected rivalries. What? Just because they live in the middle of corn? I mean, and by the way, you want to talk about total mismarketing? That Nebraska-Iowa rivalry should be called the Children of the Corn. That is picture perfect made for them, man. Come on.
I agree. There should definitely be some corn emphasis on that. The Corn Bowl. All right. Something like that. All right. I will go with my number 3. My number 3, and I feel like I'm going to be copying some people here. Oregon and Washington is my number 3. Ooh. I, as well as you, Eric, have learned the hatred between those two. And I have to say, so I always knew they hated each other, and I always knew it was a rivalry. And I've watched it on TV before and enjoyed, watching it and, some of the hate that goes on there. However, what I didn't start doing until recently is associating it with Ohio State, Michigan, right? The W is kind of like an upside down M. They're above Oregon. Oregon has the
okay.
So this is one where it's like
Bucks. Okay.
Like this is one where it's much more Wolverine, of JR is just kind of in his feels, and I look at those two and I see similarities between the way those programs kind of operate, the way they've been, Washington has been very up and down. Same thing with Michigan. They've been very up and down. Ohio State's been very consistent. Oregon for a good amount of time, not as long as Ohio State, but they've been consistent in the playoff era and even before then as well. And so, really ever since Chip Kelly, they've been very consistent. So at the end of the day, I just see so many similarities there. It's probably something on me where I'm bias or in my feelings, whatever you want to call it, but That's one that I really do enjoy watching, and I can relate to.
JR, you've heard me talk about this, but I want to get your response real fast. It's not going to be on anybody's list. But when we do this in 10 years, can you not see Oregon Ohio State being a big time rivalry?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I could see that being a big, Big Ten rival
Yeah.
that people look forward to every year.
Kind
As
of
long
similar
as it's
similar
hey,
to USC, Notre Dame, West Coast, Midwest, you know?
as long as Nike keeps fronting Oregon, they're gonna be relevant because they're gonna spare no expense. So as long as Nike's involved with all that, I think they're gonna piss off a lot of Big Ten people. I'm just telling you, there's gonna be a cohort of Big Ten fans that are going to really start to hate those West Coast teams. I can't wait for it. It's just shuffling everything up. I can't wait.
Well, the hard part I have is like I do find myself liking Oregon fans. Like not just that I see kind of the similarities, but I like Oregon fans. I like the duck. I like their passion and the green. I don't know. There's just parts of it that I really enjoy. I see the similarities between Puddles, their duck mascot, and Brutus, the Buckeye like there are so many things there that I look at and I'm like, I can see Ohio State somewhat in Oregon. Yeah, big heads. They both got big heads. But I can see it a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It doesn't sound like other Ohio State fans like Oregon as much as I do. But if there's a team coming into the Big Ten that I'm rooting for, I guess from out west, maybe not this year because I think they're going to be giving Ohio State a run for their money. But I can see myself kind of like pseudo rooting for Oregon against teams like, Maryland and Washington and USC. Like I can see myself being like, that's my West Coast team in the Big Ten.
You know what want? I want you guys to hate USC. I want you all to get there to where you start to dislike them. I want you to get the feel of that. I'm excited for that.
There's a segment of Ohio State fan base who despise USC, who lived through the 60s, because USC cost Ohio State 2 national championships. And then I think it might have been OJ, the team OJ was on. I think we might have beat them. That was the year the Super Softs beat them. A little bit before my time, obviously, but us young ones, the only time I have seen USC Ohio State has been in bowl games, which we've won, and then they beat us during the Reggie Bush years. We played a home and home with them, and they got us both times.
Smoked us.
Yeah.
I guess the second time was what? A 3-point game. But
yeah,
still,
Ohio State's second one we should have won, but
yeah. Yeah, no, John, I completely hate USC. Don't worry.
Good.
I hate their fans. I hate their stupid Coliseum stadium. I hate all of it.
It's awful. It's a dump. And if you drive a half block down the road, you're in like Watts and Compton, and you're gonna it's not even a safe place when you get 1 block off campus. The place it's a nightmare. So whatever. And I'm excited. They got 23,000 miles worth of airline travel ahead of them this year in their schedule now. That's going to add up. I'm telling you, people laugh at that, but Notre Dame does that a lot where they're flying to New York, LA, everywhere else. They're not used to that. They like to stay out west. They got 23,000 airline miles coming their way, and I want to see how they handle that and some cold, plain northern weather.
I love it. All right, John, your number 2.
Number 2, Army Navy.
Uh-oh.
And the reason I did it is purely out of respect. Eric, I totally agree with you when you describe the actual gameplay. Totally agree with you. I don't even like when we play Navy. It's annoying and they're weird and everything. But what I always end up thinking, I think you'll be able to relate to this. Think about when that game is. Isn't it usually after everything else as a standalone game, that in-between week, right?
I think it's the week after all the conference championship games.
Yeah, and it's a standalone thing. And without That means I don't have Notre Dame to worry about and everything else. I always end up watching that game thinking, without the history of these groups of people, would we have any of the other things on this list? Would this all even be a thing if we didn't have the armed forces and all that? So it has nothing to do with the gameplay, and they're not ever going to win a championship. It isn't that, but it's just kind of what it represents overall. And I also like the fact that all these other fan bases we've talked about that don't like each other and everything, nobody could really have that much against Army and Navy. It's something where everybody could watch the pageantry and see the stands filled and they're in their uniforms. And I've come to respect it. And to me, it's just that game represents something bigger than the football. And to me, I value it, but for different reasons than competitive ones or how pretty the play is, if that makes sense. But I felt an obligation to honor it.
Well, and to speak to like the play, it almost takes you back, right? Because of the way the two of them play. And you remember how college football was, long before, and that this rivalry meant so much, and it really did decide a good amount years ago. And so I'm right there with you, John. There is so much about it. I struggled with, like, do I make this number one on my list or do I make this an honorable mention?
I
not
do.
many rivalries like that.
I was right there with you on that. And also the other thing to understand is, Rockney used to battle Army in Yankee Stadium. That was like the biggest thing going with Babe Ruth there and everything. And then we have the Navy thing too. So we have an intimate history with both of these groups as well. But I'm the first one to complain that I don't like playing Navy because it's just a weird, annoying game because of the way they play. The recovery time's weird because of the unique way they do stuff. It's just a outlier weird game. But I do have respect for it. And Notre Dame's got a big history with both, and that plays into it too.
You don't like playing Navy in Ireland?
No. No, hell no. You know why?
Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Listen, I understand in theory we're all going to get on the plane and go to Dublin, and then all the Notre Dame Irish people are all going to drink, and we're going to get hammered. Guinness for everybody. Ugh. Everybody has the time of their life. But they forget it ain't about you drinking. It's about the game. And you go all the way flying your team over there. Then you have no break. You're jet lagged out the ass. Then because we had to change the schedule to accommodate that game, it meant Notre Dame played 2 months in a row with no bye. So you had 8 games in a row because you wanted to go to Dublin and drink Guinness. Put the game at home and forget about it and have a bye before you play Ohio State or right after. But no, we didn't want to do that. We wanted the money and the TV and the beer. So then you end up playing 8 weeks in a row and it screwed us. But everybody went at a fun time. Everybody went at a fun time, but I'm against it when it hurts you. I can't get some of my people to understand it ain't about your fun drinking beer. I'm 100% more worried about this team winning games than who's having fun on vacation. And I need everybody to understand that. Messed us up. 8 weeks in a row with no bye last year because of that trip. So, no.
That's why I love this guy right here, man. I knew it was going to come.
I'm sorry. I just can't handle. Oh, but John, we had so much fun. You know what's more fun than drinking? Winning.
Winning.
So that's my problem with that is people are more worried about having fun than what it's going to do to the team. You got your priorities backwards.
And that's why Army and Navy's number 2 on his list.
Because John Kenedy versus Ireland is number 1.
And I love Ireland. I love the whole thing. If you give me a bye after it, go for it. But that one game change over there made it 8 weeks in a row, and we were out of gas, and it cost us. So that's where I'm at on it. Oh, you're no fun, John. Whatever you're going to say. I'm way more worried about the game results than where I'm drinking beer. Sorry.
You're a true fan, John. You're a true
Love
fan.
it.
You give up
Love it.
your beer for the winning.
You could drink beer anywhere. Go to Dublin after we win something and celebrate. It just bothers me. Notre Dame's last AD used to take home games out of Notre Dame Stadium and put them in a random stadium somewhere else. You never give up a game you could have at home. Never, never. And he used to do it all the time. We don't need that home game. Let's go play in Jerry's World. You never turn down a game at your home. Are you too good for your home?
Yeah.
Like, come
I was
on.
about to say.
Seriously, are you too good for your home? How in the hell are you going to give away a game at Notre Dame freaking Stadium?
Oh, I love it. All right, Eric, why
I
don't
feel
you give
better. I feel better now. I had to get it out.
I was going to say, save John's vocal cords here. Give us number 2
all
for
right.
you,
Well,
Eric.
I might. This might send him into another one. My number 2 is USC Notre Dame. And here's why. You have the pretty West Coast white cheerleaders doing their little thing that they do. And you got the soldier, the USC Trojan on a horse and shiny and it looks so good. You've got, all the blonde quarterback, trained on the beaches of LA. You got OJ Simpson, Reggie Bush, and then you've got Notre Dame. You got a kilt wearing Irish drinking Guinness guy, right? Like, okay. And Notre Dame has got this Midwest, even though they don't want to admit it or claim it, Big Ten feel about them, baby.
Yeah.
And when USC, Notre Dame come together, it looks good on television. Can't turn away from it. It just looks good. The colors look good. The yellow and the red, the navy gold and green. When they wear, I love it when Notre Dame wears their green jerseys. I really do. It's pretty on television. I love that rivalry. I want to see it in the Big Ten one day. I really do.
Yeah,
But that's me being selfish.
No, you guys, it may be just a matter of when, not if. It may be a matter of when, not if, especially if all those federal court cases start figuring out that people owe the players money or we got to pay them, whatever. It may be a situation of when, not if, and there's no question to me where they would go. It's right into the big. I don't even consider the ACC or any. Is it even going to exist? Like, I don't even know. It would be right into the Big Ten, smooth sailing, and off we go. So it will not surprise me if one day we wake up and that's the news. I'm not going to be shocked. Everything's pointing that direction.
I know there's a lot of financial talk and things behind that. But when Ohio State brought on USC, the day after that announcement happened was the first time I legitimately saw real Notre Dame fans go, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because that when their big rival, imagine Michigan getting taken from the Big Ten and moved to the Big 12. Like that feeling of, that's our rival. Like, as much as we hate them, and I'll talk about that in a minute, you make one another.
Yeah.
You're not who you are without them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I really do feel like that move, if Notre Dame makes that move to the Big Ten, that game gets bumped up a level a little bit to where now you've got Ohio State, Michigan, you've got USC, Notre Dame, and you watch NBC, CBS, Fox drool over who's going to get that game, fighting and for the television rights to that. So I just feel like if that were to happen and they would make that Week 12 game, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Notre Dame, Week 12, back-to-back, Big Ten owns the final say of the regular season.
Yeah, that would be really, really interesting. And so It is interesting that I had it a spot lower than both of you guys did since I'm the Notre Dame guy. But I guess I kind of made a special exemption for Army Navy for different reasons. So I can say I'm kind of in that same ballpark, but I felt an obligation to Army Navy for the Notre Dame history and what they have done for the country. So, but that is interesting. But yeah, man, it may be when, not if. We'll see.
Yeah, I had him number 2 as well. And the part that I didn't mention earlier is, and you mentioned it when you were talking about him, John, is like there have been championships decided by this game. You know, same way with my number 1 game, which I think we all know what we're going to get to here in a minute. But like when championships are decided by a rivalry, I don't know how you can say it's not one of the best rivalries in college football. Like, don't get me wrong, Alabama and Auburn, very good rivalry. However, as Alabama and Auburn, how many times have that actually decided the national championship or who goes to the national championship? Not nearly as much as USC Notre Dame, or not nearly as much as Ohio State Michigan. You know, I'm so sick and tired of these freaking stupid Southern rivalries because they get all the 5-star recruits and all the, you know, this, that, and the other. And there was one year where Cam Newton was good for Auburn. So everybody's like, oh, the Iron Bowl. And then Alabama throws a couple passes at the end of the game to have a magical thing. And it's like, well, no, Alabama should have never been in that situation before because Auburn sucks. Auburn is terrible, and Alabama's getting themselves in this situation. At least when Ohio State struggles with Michigan, they're good, right? I mean, that, and when Michigan struggles with Ohio State, they're good. There's something going on there. But
or they know our plays,
right? But at the end of the day, like Auburn, not consistently good. Yes, it's a good game here and there and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not deciding championships like USC, Notre Dame, or Ohio State, Michigan.
One more thing I'd like to add to this, and again, I know you're younger than both Eric and I. The history of not just titles, but USC and Notre Dame battle for most Heismans back and forth. They battle for most draft picks all time back and forth. And what do you call all pros that come out of there? That's the kind of stuff that like our fan base follows. And there's always that long-term lineage of what has been put in the league from both of those schools too. So yeah, it's just great, man. There's nothing like it. And it's our number 1 rival. So it's heated.
Yeah. Heisman winners. Notre Dame has 7. USC has 8. Winning percentage. Notre Dame is 4th all time. USC is 8th all time. National championships, both 11 and 11. I mean, honestly, like I thought of this game and then I said, I know I love watching this game. And then I went to Winsipedia and I was like, I got to compare these side by side really fast just to make sure I have number 2 as the right one. And as soon as I looked at it, I was like, yeah, there's no question. Yeah. This is the second best rivalry in college football, not just Northern, in all of college football. All right, John, I think we're going to be pretty similar. I know me and Eric's number 1.
Oh, you know, how do you know?
Yeah, I think I know you well enough, Eric. John, what is your number 1 rivalry?
You know what it is. It's Michigan, Ohio State. It's man, here's the thing. I hope this makes sense. And I mean it in the purest, most genuine way. That game is just fueled by pure, genuine hatred across the board for everybody. Like the media, the fans, everything. Like it's so genuine. And it means so much to everybody every single year. It's the one game outside of anything Notre Dame where I'm like, I literally can't wait to turn on the TV for this game because you feel the juice. All of the reasons we love college football, and I love it more than pro football, is this kind of juice. You just don't get that, even from like the Bears and the Packers. It's just a different thing in college. And it feels so genuine, so real. And it's so like even petty at times with the back and forth stuff. I love all of that. Like that's right up my alley. Like I love all of it. And also, like you guys mentioned, it's usually for something big. That's the other thing. You're not just playing it and it's the names you're used to and whatever. There's usually something big on the line for one or both of these teams. And where it's been positioned in the schedule too, being at the end, like for all those reasons, it's the number one game that gets me excited outside of any of ours. And it's always been that way. I love the hatred.
Eric, do you love hatred?
Well, the Bible says to hate and sin not. So hate is okay. You just can't sin with it, right, John?
No, Eric, wait, hear me out, man.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Football hatred unites us.
Yeah,
Everything else going in this country divides us. I genuinely mean this philosophically. Football hatred unites this country. Like it does. It's healthy. It's good for us. I love it.
It's so funny. I can go to certain games in my 42 years of existence as a Buckeye fan that I was nervous for. None in big games. We're talking playoffs, national championship games. Every year, last Saturday in November, I'm more nervous about that game than I am when we played Alabama, Georgia, Oregon for the national championship. That there's just something there that you waited 360 some odd days for. And if we don't win this game, I'm going to have to hear it for 360 more odd days, online, in person, walking the streets. But if we win, then I get to dish it to them. And there's just that build up. And I think the players feel that on the field. I know the coaches feel it. And this is it's crazy. It's not always the best team wins. In fact, a lot of times, looking back at how the game has gone, it's the team that's ruined the other team's season more times than not. There's been times Ohio State's absolutely ruined what they had, and vice versa. We've gone into the game 11-0, ready to go, win the Big Ten, go on, and especially during the 90s, and then recently, they've ruined our season.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it is it seems to go in streaks. They own the 90s. We own the 2000s and 2010s. Now it's swung back to them. The pendulum has swung back to them. And when I said the Ohio State wouldn't really be Ohio State without that game and without that team, I really do mean that. And they wouldn't be who they are without us. They'll tell you they are.
Yeah.
But they know they're not.
Yeah.
They know they're not. Especially when it comes to recruiting, because gosh darn it, most of their best players are from the stinking state of Ohio, including their best coach. So there's that too. But I love the rivalry. I love the game. Some of my good friends are fans from them, of that team. And I hate it, but at the same time, I love it because it's just, it makes life freaking entertaining.
Yeah.
It really does.
I think you'll agree. When you were describing that feeling you have before that game, or like the night before it, or the morning of, like whatever, that's one of the things I love most about college football is the buildup and the anticipation and the feeling. There's nothing like it. Pacing around all morning, the buildup to me on a lot of this is just, it's the best part, man. So I love this game. I love it every year.
I have not had a Thanksgiving that I have not felt nervous the entire time, and I don't know how long. Ever since the game got moved to the Saturday after Thanksgiving, I remember for a while, after Ohio State would win, and then we'd have Thanksgiving, and be like, all right, this is great. I love this. Woohoo, Thanksgiving, all that. And then now all I associate Thanksgiving with is going to my family's house and just being absolutely completely nervous the entire time. Every single time at Thanksgiving, me and my brother will sit down next to each other and we'll look at each other and we'll say,
what do you
think?
For
this weekend?
Yeah. What do you? And see, we have that every other year because when USC comes to us, it's in October. When we go there, it's that Saturday after Thanksgiving. So we have that same dynamic where it's like my mom will be like, can we just not talk about football for get through dinner at least? Like that,
Right?
that whole thing, man. Yeah.
And then John says, sometimes it's just good to yell about football.
Exactly. Get with the program. Always Irish's mom.
I love it. And the thing I don't think that some people understand who aren't from the Midwest or maybe from Ohio or Michigan is they don't understand how much I know you get it, John. You're over in Indiana, but I know you get it. Like, I don't think they understand how much the culture in each of those states change based on one football game. I mean, it's different now with social media and people aren't as social as they once were. But I remember like years after Ohio State would lose, you would see so much more Michigan gear. You would hear so much more about, I'm thinking about going to Michigan to, for college football or, maybe Ohio State's the best, but Michigan won. Like there is so much that changes in each state based off of one football game, just one football game. So much changes, and I don't know a single other football game that changes the culture of an entire state for 360 some odd days.
Here's something crazy. When Ohio State's beating them consistently, Michigan State's also better. Look it up.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a weird stat. And here's a stat that's not good. Suicide rates in the states of Michigan and Ohio go up and down based off the win-loss too.
I'd like to think those aren't related.
That's insane.
It is insane.
Is it statistically to an amount that registers?
I don't think so, but it's just I read an article one time and I was like, that's crazy.
Wow.
I think it gets in the psyche of the fans in that state. It really does, because you're just depressed. You're more depressed or you're more happy based off of that game.
And it's probably
wild.
And it's probably not like the result of that game, but a lot of other things. And then that's like the final thing where you're like, nope, I'm done. I'm done. Like the last thing. That's wild, man. Wow.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, it always comes down to that game based on your season. About the only thing you can do that would maybe heal the wound of losing that season is winning the national championship, which is a possibility nowadays. And it was with the I remember when we lost in 2022, and I thought to myself, maybe a national championship will, heal this wound. And when I saw Michigan lose and I saw the game against, I hurt more after that Georgia game than I did after the Michigan-Ohio State game, because I knew there was no hope. I knew there was no hope to make me feel any better, and that I was going to be miserable the rest of that year. And I think if you ask Michigan fans, even though they try to hide it sometime and they try to make it sound like, oh, we don't care, I think if you ask Michigan fans, they would say the same thing, that when you lose that game and there is no possibility to recover from it, there is a sense of your life where there is no hope. And it is depressing in football terms.
It gets in your head, and so it's funny. John, go look at the comments when I do a Michigan video. I talk about something going on with their program. Go look at the comments. Every stinking maize and blue fan, we live rent free in your head. I'm like, guys, like, I'm going to talk about you whether we beat you or we lost to you. That's not living rent free. That's called content. But them doing that over and over and over and over again kind of does get in your head a little bit, because then you're like, do I really want to put that video out there? Because they're gonna jump on there and they're gonna,
Yeah.
they're gonna make the comment about it. It's crazy the psychological
Mm.
warfare that this rivalry has, not only between the coaching staff, the players, but the fan bases even.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And then it was always like that, but it was like at the corner bar. Now it's everywhere on social media. That's the other
Right.
big difference over the years, too. It's everywhere now, man. Like Notre Dame loses. I know my life's going to be miserable on the internet for like a couple weeks. It's just the way it goes. Like I'm going to take shots from everybody. And that's the fun of it, and you just hope you're on the other side enough.
I would never take shots at Notre Dame for having 10 men on the field. I'm just kidding. Sorry, John. I had to do it. All right. So that is our list of the top 5 Northern, quote unquote, rivalries in college football.
We had USC and half of our answers were talking about Northern, but I was just trying to stay away from the SEC.
Deep South. Non-deep South. There you go.
Which I feel bad for teams like Pitt because like they're in the ACC, but I didn't consider anybody from the ACC, so I was like,
and then I was trying, dude. I Googled U.S. map to try and rationalize that Oklahoma is far enough north. I could do Oklahoma, but I'm like, man, Texas. I really wanted to squeeze that in, but that's SEC now too.
Yep.
So I tried to, I'm like, can I get away with this? Where's the Oklahoma line here? But man, this is fun. And the one thing I take away from it is just how much this all means to everybody who loves this the way we do, man. Like it's a beautiful thing and you make a lot of friends and everybody can relate. It's a beautiful thing, man.
This football season, it's going to be an interesting dynamic to watch all the podcasts interact in the College Huddle and see who pops off first. Because, we all have egos, man. Like we all do, like everybody's super cordial right now. Everybody's very nice, but I keep getting warned by Skeeter to not bring Kansas in. Apparently Missouri and Kansas is a hot thing. I didn't know,
but that's good for what we're trying to do. Not bad. Bring in some juice, bring in some heat, baby. Let's go.
Maybe someday we'll bring in a Michigan podcast.
We're working on it, but man, they're insufferable right now. I'm telling you.
I love it. All right. Hey, thank you everybody for watching. Go catch John Kenedy over on Always Irish. You probably do know that already. And catch me and Eric on the OHIO podcast. Gentlemen, anything else before we get out of here?
I would like to say I'm really glad we held to our 25-minute plan that we had for this episode. When you said it, JR, I just started laughing like, dude, it's just not going to happen. Clear your calendar. It ain't going to happen. The second you go 20, 25 minutes, I just laughed in your face. It ain't going to happen, dude. You got to book an hour at least. It ain't going to happen.
John said,
I'm disciplined.
John said, caller, I'm coming to you in 35 minutes.
I know, dude. I can never juggle that right to be fair to everybody. I can't. It's hard, man. I need a producer.
I'm very impressed by how long you can go, John. I've seen your call-in shows can last 2-3 hours sometimes, and I'm like, okay, I can understand that if it's like 2 people on, like Eric and Chris doing one together. But man, you're all by yourself. I'm impressed.
You go with the flow, and you just see where it leads, and you never know.
I love it. Eric, anything else before we get out of here?
Nah, we got our live call-in shows on Thursday night, 8:00, and then when we do our roundtable talks, 8:00 on Sunday night. We're gonna be doing. We're copying the Always Irish. John doesn't mind it, but he's been helping me out behind the scenes. We're gonna be doing live call-in shows after the games this year, so that promises to get spicy, especially if things don't go well for one Ryan Day early this season.
That's going to be fun for you, man. It opens things up, man. People are used to being talked to. It's good to give them a voice. That's what people like, man. Give them a voice. And You got to be on your toes, though, because you never know what you're going to get. You got to be nimble because you never know what you're going to get when that line calls in. There's no way to predict it. You got to just kind of fit in where you get in and feel it out.
I haven't had to use the mute button yet, but I have a feeling that's coming.
Baby. Yeah. Watch out for that.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate it. Go check out the OHIO podcast and Always Irish. And if you have a rivalry that we did not mention, please do put that in the comments. We would appreciate hearing from you as well. Check out the College Huddle and all of our podcasts at thecollegehuddle.com. You can also check out our conference shows here on the College Huddle YouTube channel. We have ones for the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and even a group of 5 show as well. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Have a good one.